Today's daf, we're going to learn Shabbat Daf Kuf Lamed Gimel. We finished at the end of the daf, we saw Rava. Rava wanted to tell us, if you look about 10 lines from the bottom, he says that the whole issue of having a drasha, if you remember, we learned that if you need to do Brit Milah and there happens to be a negat tzara, there's a leprous mark right there, you're allowed to cut it, even though there's a not only an asay telling you, but there's not only a lot asay telling you can't do this, there's also a mitzvah asay saying that you can't, right? Hishamer b'negat tzarat, and then it says la'aso, to do like what they tell you, which means there's both an asay and a lot asay, and yet Brit Milah overrides this. And we have a special drasha from the word basal. So then Rava says, by the way, this thing about basal, you only need a drasha if it's milah shelo bismana, if you're doing the Brit Milah not on the 8th day. But if you're doing it bismana, it's obvious that it's dochet tzarat. And why is that? Because if it's dochet Shabbat, kal v'chomer, it's going to be dochet tzarat. And that goes back to that whole thing we kept saying, is Shabbat more chamor than tzarat, or is tzarat more chamor than Shabbat? So he says, clearly Shabbat's more chamor than tzarat, and therefore, if Brit Milah shelo bis, I'm sorry, wait, let me get it straight. He says, right, if Shabbat is dochet, if, right, Milah bismana, when the Milah is done in the proper time, it's dochet Shabbat, then obviously it will be dochet tzarat, and you'll be allowed to do this. But that's only true for Milah bismana. Obviously, Milah shelo bismana won't be dochet Shabbat, and that's why you need the pasuk. That's Rava. Comes Rav Safra and disagrees with him based on the logic we saw yesterday. What do you mean? He says, tzarat is more chamor, and therefore you don't have your kal v'chomer, and therefore you need your drasha, even if Milah is done in its proper time. Then we started to say, no, tzarat, they tried to answer Rav Safra, tzarat, not any more chamor, because why? The reason why you can't do it, why tzarat is not doche the avoda, is not because it's so chamor, and that's why if all the kohanim become mitzuraim, we can't just cut off their negat tzarat and let them work, because that won't even help. They'll still need to do tefillah, and then they say, well, even they say, what about a negat tahor? I wanted to go back to this because a negat tahor, tried to explain it yesterday, is it's a Baal Mum, but it's not exactly clear what a negat tahor is. It's not a term that's generally used. And there's a lot of different interpretations what this negat tahor, but they say if you have a negat tahor, theoretically it sounds like it's something you could cut off and be allowed to work right away. You wouldn't need to do tefillah. So I just wanted to mention a few interpretations that are brought, although they're all kind of difficult because it's really hard to understand what they mean. Because as soon as you call it a negat tahor, who's to say that it's forbidden to cut it off? It's not so clear. Some people say, and it actually relates to what we do, quarantine and all that, when you quarantine a leper, so he has to go 7 days, right? First we say that we kind of see, maybe it will spread, maybe it won't spread. So some people say when we're talking about that quarantine time period where it's not clear, okay, this is something we can all relate to nowadays, where it's not clear what your status is. So when it comes to those days of quarantine, then when you're not yet what we call muchlat, where it's decided that you're a leper, then theoretically, maybe we're talking about there, where you can't cut it off, but you also don't need any sort of purification process. The problem is that some people say, it doesn't say anywhere you can't cut it off, so it's not exactly clear whether we mean this, whether we mean Rashi says we're talking about bohak, which is some leprous mark, which is actually not tameh. Again, it becomes a question, then where do you see that you actually can't cut it off? So it's unclear what exactly this means. I'll just kind of leave it as an open question. So then we said, so in fact, we then tried to say that knocks off what we were trying to say against Rav Safra. So they give a different explanation about the asay and the lot asay happening at the same moment. Okay, that's how they respond to Rav Safra. But now they want to point out, fourth word from the end of the daf yesterday, the ha Rava v'Rav Safra tenaihi. This machloket between the two of them is a machloket tanaim. What does that mean? Whether, again, Rava says, you don't need a verse to prove. It's just logical that you would learn if the Milah is happening on the 8th day, of course you can cut off the tzarat, kal v'chomer from Shabbat, versus Rav Safra who says, no, it wouldn't be so obvious. You actually need a drasha for that also. So here we're going to see two different opinions about this, and they're going to match up to line up to the two opinions that we saw. Titanya, it says in the Braita, basal va'af al pi sheyesham beheret yimol. As we see, right, this is our drasha. Basar comes to teach you can cut off the orla, even if it has a leprous mark of baheret, you can still do it. Divrei Rabbi Yoshia. That shows you need a drasha. That's Rav Safra who says you need a drasha across the board. Rabbi Yonatan omer eino tzarich. You don't need a drasha. Why? Shabbat chamura docha tzara, lo kol sheken. If it pushes off Shabbat, which is so stringent, of course it's going to push off tzara'at, and that's exactly what Rava says. So we basically just see, not only are two Amoraim disagreeing about this, also two Tanaim in the previous generations also disagreed. Amar Mar. Now we're going to go into Divrei Rabbi Yoshia. Basar afal pi sheyesham beheret yimol divrei Rabbi Yoshia. So that's Rabbi Yoshia's opinion. We have this drasha. Ha lama likra. Why do we even need a verse? And now we're going to go back and say, wait a minute, this whole thing shouldn't even need a pasuk. Why? Davar she'eno mitkavenhu. When you cut off the orla of the baby, what's your intent? Your intent is not to cut off the leprous mark. Your intent is to cut off the orla. So when you cut off the leprous mark, you're doing an isur lo taseh, but you're doing it in a way that's davar she'eno mitkaven. You're not intending. That's not your intention. So why should you even need a drasha to say this is allowed? Of course it's allowed. We paskin like Rabbi Shimon, the davar she'eno mitkaven is mutar. The davar she'eno mitkaven mutar, the Gemara tells us. So we'll have two different answers, one Abai, one Rava. In the end, Abai is going to agree with Rava. But first, he has his own answer. Amar Abai, lo nitzracha ela leRabbi Yehuda, da'amar davar she'eno mitkaven asur. We know this famous machloket Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda. By the way, there's a debate always about or there's discussion about whether it applies in other situations or is it just an issue for Shabbat. From this sugya, it clearly seems to be that it's also an issue for other things and not just Shabbat. So it must be that this drasha is only according to Rabbi Yehuda. Now keep this in mind, because if the drasha is only according to Rabbi Yehuda, we're going to later come and ask, well, then what would Rabbi Shimon do with the word basar if he doesn't need it for this drasha? So hold that in your head, because we're going to come back to it. But basically, we're saying this drasha is only according to Rabbi Yehuda, who holds the davar she'eno mitkaven, and if you do something unintentionally, you're still obligated. Rav Amar, what are you talking about? Afilu tema Rabbi Shimon, modeh Rabbi Shimon b'sikresha v'lo yamut. Rabbi Shimon agrees. You probably were thinking about this when I said it. Rabbi Shimon agrees. This is a case of psikresha. When you cut off the orla, you're clearly going to cut off the leprous mark. That's what we call a psikresha. It's definitely going to happen. And Rabbi Shimon is modeh. He agrees that if it's a psikresha, which means, remember, cut off the head of the chicken, of course it's going to die. So if when you cut off this mark, the orla, clearly you're also cutting off the leprous mark, then obviously you're going to be chayav, even according to Rabbi Shimon, and that's why you need the drasha, even according to Rabbi Shimon. So now they question Abaye. Abaye, lately Haisfara, he doesn't have that same logic. Doesn't he hold the same thing as Rava when it comes to this? Vaha Abaye v'Rava, don't we know that Abaye v'Rava, the Amrei Travayu, they both say that modeh Rabbi Shimon b'sikresha v'lo yamut. They both think that Rabbi Shimon agrees in a case of psikresha, and obviously this is a psikresha. So, Batar Deshame Merava Svara. In fact, Abai changed his mind. Once he heard what Rava said, he said, oh, you're right. Okay, and he changes his mind, and therefore this is both according to Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. You still need a drasha, because even though it's theoretically davar she'eno mitkaven, it's one of those davar she'eno mitkavens that in any case is going to be forbidden because it's a psikresha. Now, that's one way of reading this sugya. The second way of reading this sugya is that this whole discussion we just had, exact carbon copy of it, was not about our drasha, it was about something else. And that's what we're going to read right now. And that's why if you look at the chart on the sheet, you see that there's this discussion, but on top there's two sections. Either it's on this drasha or it's on the other drasha. And then the conversation is going to be the exact same conversation. It's just that they were talking about something else. So Ika Damatne Lahad Abai Rava, this whole discussion with Abai and Rava here was on the following. Hishamer b'negat tzara l'shmor v'ov v'lasot. That's the pasuk where we said there was an aseh and a lo taseh. The mitzvah lo taseh is hishamer b'negat tzara. Be careful not to do this. La lishmor ma'od, and then it says ula asot kechol asher yorucha, to do exactly as they tell you. So that's the mitzvah aseh. Now, what are they darshan here? La asot iyata oseh. You can't do this, meaning be careful not to do this. What is not to do this? To cut it off by yourself. But what does it mean? What can you do? You can't actually do it, but what does that mean? You can do it indirectly. What does that mean? You can put something on your regel, like some sort of fibers on your leg, And when you place that on, it will cut off the leprous mark. Or you could put some sort of pole on your shoulder, and it'll rub against it, and it'll knock it off. V'im avra, avra. And if it falls off, no problem. In other words, you could basically do it indirectly. So now they say, V'hala malika. Why do you need a verse to tell you that this can be done indirectly? Davar she'enu mitkaven. V'davar she'enu mitkaven mutar. Isn't this a classic davar she'enu mitkaven? And a davar she'enu mitkaven, in other words, what happens? You put the pole on your shoulder, and if it rubs against it, so it causes it, we're kind of mixing two things. It's kind of more indirect than davar she'enu mitkaven, but theoretically, it could also be viewed as a davar she'enu mitkaven. What did I mean to do? I meant to put a mote on my shoulder. And it ended up rubbing it out. I wasn't intending to rub it out. So again, this is davar she'enu mitkaven. You shouldn't need a verse. This should be obvious that it's allowed. Again, when we have a verse that means it's not obvious, you need to have a special drasha to teach it. The davar she'enu mitkaven mutar, right? We know that it's already allowed. So now we're going to have the exact same discussion. Amar Abaye lo nitzchal el Rabbi Yehuda. This drasha must be only for Rabbi Yehuda. Da'amar davar she'enu mitkaven asur. V'Rava amar afilu tema Rabbi Shimon u'mod Rabbi Shimon b'sik reisha v'lo yamud. Now this is a little strange, and this is the weakness of this one, which is it's not so clear that if you put a pole on your shoulder that it's going to rub off your leprous mark, but you'd have to assume that it would be, otherwise it wouldn't be psik reisha. So you'd have to say, by putting this on your shoulder, it's definitely going to rub it out, and therefore Rava says it even matches Rabbi Shimon's opinion because this is a case of a psik reisha. V'Abaye lately haisfara, what he doesn't think that Rabbi Shimon's modern psik reisha, and he said that this isn't Rabbi Shimon. They both say, so the answer again, the same as in the previous. After he heard it from Rava, he understood this, right? He changed his mind, and therefore he would agree with Rava that both of these drashot match Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda, meaning both Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon need this drasha to teach you that you can cut it off, because even though theoretically it would be davar she'enu mitkaven, in other words, either when you're doing the Brit Milah or when you put something on your body and it rubs it off, right? By the way, that case has nothing to do with Brit Milah, just to be clear. It just has to do with cutting off leprous marks. So therefore, this would be according to both. But now they go back to the beginning. I told you to remember this because Abaye, Aliva de Rabbi Shimon, Hai Basar Mai Avidle. According to what Abaye thought in the beginning, was that this drasha was only according to Rabbi Yehuda. What would the drasha, according to Rabbi Shimon, be? What would he do with the word basar? Amarav Amram be'omer lakutz bahar tohu mitkaven. So he says it would be someone who says, I'm cutting off the orla in order to so I'm cutting off the orla in order to also get rid of the leprous mark. In other words, I want to do two things when I'm cutting this off. I want to get rid of both. So now they say, wait a minute. Whose kavanah are we talking about here? Because there's different people. There's the person getting the Brit Milah. He's a baby. He doesn't have da'at, right? He doesn't have knowledge. Well, the Gemara says, Tinach gadol. So let's assume he's a gadol. I understand. If he's a gadol and he has a leprous mark there and he's doing Brit Milah and he says, listen, I want you to cut off both, right? And then comes the drasha. This is what Rabbi Shimon will say. Again, this is all in the world of theoretical because we already said this drasha is according to Rabbi Shimon. But what Abaye thought originally was that basar was not needed to teach you. You can do it even if you don't intend when you're doing the Brit Milah. We're now saying it's a case where you, according to Rabbi Shimon, who holds davar she'enu mitkaven is mutar, we'd have to find a case where theoretically you have intent, and then theoretically it would be forbidden. Comes the drasha to tell you, oh no, it's allowed anyway. So it would have to be where the gadol had intent. That would make sense. But katan ma'ika l'meimar. But where would you have a case of this with a katan? Because the katan doesn't have any intent, so you wouldn't say it's a davar, right? You have to find a case where there's intent. The Rabbi Shimon would actually say it's asur. Amarav Mishashia ba'omer avi haben lakutz baheret b'nohu dekamakaven. It's the father of the son who has the intent. He wants to cut off not only the orla of the child, but also the leprous mark. And he says basically, right, he has intent for both. Comes Rabbi Shimon and he says, even though it's a davar shemitkaven and it should be asur, we're going to allow it because of the drasha of basar. It's allowed. V'ika acher li'aved acher, but that doesn't make any sense. if the father, okay, now we're going to learn something interesting. Let me read on and then I'll explain. De'amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. Kol makom she'ata motzeh aseh v'lo taseh. That's what we have here. We have a mitzvah aseh to do brit milah. We have a mitzvah lo taseh, not to cut off the leprous mark. If any case where we have that, and we say that the aseh overrides the lo taseh, im ata yachol lakayem shnehem mutav. If you can do it in a way that both can happen, in other words, you can not go against the lo taseh, then you should do it that way. If you have a better way to do it, basically, it's a last resort. We don't allow it. Now, this is always an issue when we talk about things being doche other things. There's always a debate. Is it that they wipe it out entirely and it's as if it's not there? Or is it there and therefore we should minimize damage? If we can do it in a way that we wouldn't be going against the lo taseh, we should. So now what's the case? So go back to the first line. Why don't we say, if the father wants to get rid of this leprous mark, then he shouldn't do it. We should have someone else do it, because if someone else does the brit milah, he's not going to care so much about the leprous mark of the baby. So when he does the brit milah, he's going to cut it in a way that he doesn't have intent to get rid of the leprous mark. And if that's the case, then what will we say? Better to have someone else do it. So we shouldn't have this drasha telling us the father can do it even if he has intent, because he should find someone else to do it. That's really what he should be doing. So the Gemara answers, delay ka'acher. It must be a case where there isn't anyone else to do it. If there's no one else to do it, comes the drasha to tell you the father can do it. Again, this is all theoretical before we assume that Rabbi Shimon does hold this anyway. But assuming we think this is Devar She'eino Mitkaven, we're going to say Rabbi Shimon holds in the drasha is coming again. Let's start from the beginning. The drasha, basar, afal pi sheyesh beheret imo, according to Rabbi Yoshia, is coming to say that even if there's intent of the father, in a case where he can't find anyone else to do it, and he wants to get rid of both the leprous mark and get rid of the foreskin for the sake of doing the mitzvah of circumcision, we allow him to do it. That's what Rabbi Shimon comes. It says, even though theoretically this should be forbidden by Torah law, comes the pasuk to teach you it's allowed. Okay, but if there's someone else who could do it, better to have someone else. And if he wasn't intending, well, then you don't even need a drasha for that. Okay, if he wasn't intending, then that would be davar she'eino mitkaven, which is mutar. Again, that's all theoretical, because in the end, we say that this is a davar she'eino mitkaven. That's a psik reisha. And even Rabbi Shimon will agree that it's asur. So this was all in the theoretical, the first idea that Abaye had before he changed his mind. Now we're going back to the fact that Brit Milah is Dochesh Shabbat, although the Gemara words it in Yom Tov for whatever reason. It's because they're quoting something from before where we were talking about Yom Tov. Amar Mar, we stated before, Yom Tov eino doche ela bizmana bilvad. You can only do a Brit Milah on Yom Tov, and obviously on Shabbat, if it's the 8th day. Once you pass the 8th day, for whatever reason you didn't do it in its time, whether you had a heter not to do it in its time, or whatever it might be that you didn't do it in its time, or you were just lax about it, you can't do it on Yom Tov. Where do we learn that you can't do it on Yom Tov, and obviously also on Shabbat? From where do we derive this? We're now going to have 4 different derivations. Amar Chizkiah v'chein katana debei Chizkiah. Amar Cha lo totiru mimenu ad boker. This is the verse that talks about the sacrifice, the Korban Pesach. Remember what happens with the Korban Pesach? We slaughter the animal on the afternoon of Yud Daled, of the 14th. That's Erev Pesach. So now we take that we have the slaughtering, we take it, we eat it that night. Whatever's left, which is Pesach, whatever's left in the morning, the pasuk says, Lo totiru mimenu ad boker. Don't leave over any meat. You have to eat all of it. V'hanotar mimenu ad boker. But if you do leave it over, that's what we call notar, leftovers, which have to be burned. Ba'esh tisrofu, has to be burned. Now, there's something extra in that verse. We've seen this verse before. We always darshan this. It says, don't leave over till the morning, and what's left over till the morning, burn by fire. Now, you could have just said, what's left over? You didn't have to say, what's left over till the morning. You already said, don't leave it over till the morning. Obviously, we mean what's left over till the morning. So, Gemara says, Chizkiah, there's a time by Chizkiah, which is quoted many, many times in the Gemara. Amar kra lo totiru mimenu ad boker, she'ein tamud lamar ad boker. You don't need the second ad boker. Ma tamud lamar ad boker. So why does it appear a second time? Ba katuv litein lo boker sheni l'sreifato. What does this teach you? You would have thought that, what does it mean? If you leave it over till the morning of the 15th of Nisan, which is Pesach, the first day of Pesach, which is a Chag, which is a Yom Tov, you should burn it that day. But they say, no. Ad Boker, the second time comes to teach you, burn it the following day. Don't burn it today. On the 15th, burn it the following day. Why? Because the following day is Chol HaMoed. It's not Chag. On Chag, we only let you burn. Now, what's the issue here? This is something that was started on the 14th. So it's not something that's needed for Yom Tov. It was something that had to do with a Yom Chol. It's what we call Tzarchei Chol. It's kind of like the Brit Milah. The Brit Milah was supposed to be done before, or whatever it is. It's not, today is not its day. So it's something that has to do with something that should have been done on a Yom Chol, or can only be done on a Yom Chol. And therefore, we don't allow it to be done. Just like we can't burn that extra meat, we also can't do the Brit Milah. Yom Tov is only for things that have to do with that day. And this no longer has to do with that day because it's not Bismana. Abaye Amarcha, he learns it from a different verse. I told you there'll be 4, so now we're up to number 2. Olat Shabbat b'Shabbato. This is where you can bring the Ola of Shabbat, the burnt offering of Shabbat, on Shabbat, b'Shabbato, on its Shabbat. What do we darshan from this? Why does it just could have said Ola b'Shabbato? Why did it say the Ola of Shabbat, on its Shabbat? V'lo olah chol b'Shabbat, v'lo olat chol b'Yom Tov. You can't take a regular sacrifice that's supposed to be done on a Yom Chol and sacrifice it on Shabbat or sacrifice it on Yom Tov. So what do you learn from here? You can't do a Brit Milah that's not supposed to be done on Shabbat, right? Only on Shabbat can you do what's specific for that day. Rava Amar, third, Amar Kha, Hu levado yaseh lachem. What does it say by Ochal Nefesh? The things that are allowed on Yom Tov, it says you can do things that are for the purposes of food. Hu levado, this only comes to basically say only this and not anything else. So what does it come to exclude? Hu velo machshirin. First, it comes to exclude any preparations that can be done before Yom Tov, right? Things that you could have done before Yom Tov can't be done on Yom Tov, even for food purposes. And so that's what the hu comes. They're basically darshaning both hu and levado, 2 things. Hu comes to say hu, this, and not machshirin. And levado comes to say levado, v'lo milah shelo b'zmana, and not milah that's not in its proper time. Da'ate mikal v'chomer. Okay, this is a strange line. Da'ate mikal v'chomer. Rashi says what it means is, were it not for the drasha, we could have learned milah shelo b'zmana b'chal v'chomer. What's the kal v'chomer? That was from previous. What did we learn? If milah shelo b'zmana is dochet sara'at, and sara'at is more chamor than Shabbat, then you would think it's dochet Shabbat. So were it not for the drasha, we would have thought it would be dochet Shabbat, and therefore this drasha specifically comes to tell you it's not dochet Shabbat. Doesn't override Shabbat. Last option, Rav Ashi Amar Shabbaton. And this is when it talks about Rosh Hashanah. It says, "B'chodesh hashvi'i be'echad l'chodesh yeh lachem Shabbaton." You should have a day of rest. So what do they teach you here? It's a sehu. That Shabbaton means it's a mitzvah aseh, to rest. Okay, it's not just a lo taseh, don't do work. It's also a mitzvah aseh, to rest. A positive commandment. V'havale Yom Tov aseh v'lo taseh. So now we say, so what do you see here? Yom Tov is both a positive and a negative, right? Number 1, you have to rest in a positive sense of the word, and you can't do any work in the negative commandment. Ve'ein aseh doche et lo taseh v'aseh. So the 4th answer is that milah is a mitzvah aseh, and Yom Tov is a mitzvah aseh v'lo taseh. So it's not doche. Now this is a little tricky because it doesn't really indicate if it's what happens when it's bismana. When it's bismana, it does override, but you'd have to explain that. But he basically says from there you learn that there is some case where it's not going to override, and that must be milah shelo bismana. So we have 4 different answers. In this case, the Gemara didn't reject any answers; it just kind of brought all 4. Klal Amar Rabbi Akiva. This was all first we started with Rabbi Eliezer, who says all the machshirim, right? He had that weird shita that you can even build your sukkah if you don't have a sukkah on Shabbat. You can do all sorts of machshirei mitzvah. Rabbi Akiva disagreed. Then we segued into, well, they all say that that the milah itself is doche Shabbat, and then we tried to see where they get that from, and then we got into this whole thing about the tzarat and all that as an aside. Now we're back to the main machloket, and Rabbi Akiva says, which is also the rabbi's approach, this is not doche all the machshirin. You can't do preparations, like you don't have a knife, you can't start building a knife, creating a knife, you can't do that. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amarav, halacha ke Rabbi Akiva. We paskin like Rabbi Akiva, in fact, which is why you all didn't know that you could build a sukkah on Shabbat, because we don't paskin that way, okay, very simply. Utnad nami, and it says in the Mishnah, Gabe Pesach ki agavna. There's also a Mishnah in Pesach which says the same thing. And in fact, we also paskin there, Rabbi Yehuda says there, that we also paskin like Rabbi Akiva. What's this Mishnah? Klal amar Rabbi Akiva, kol malacha she'efshar la'asota me'erev Shabbat, eino doche et Shabbat. Anything you can do before Shabbat doesn't override Shabbat. It's exactly what he says by us. So shchita she'efshar la'asota me'erev Shabbat, we're talking about Pesach, the Korban Pesach. If Yud Daled Nisan falls out on Shabbat, what do? We sacrifice the Korban Pesach on Yud Daled. You're supposed to slaughter the animal. So we're allowed to do that on Shabbat. Why? Because Efshar Lasot Ha'Erev Shabbat. You can't do that before. You can't do it on the 13th. The mitzvah is on the 14th. Rav Yehuda Amarav Halacha ki Rabbi Akiva. He says, we paskin like Rabbi Akiva. Okay, where it's not dochet, right? Meaning, if, let's say, you forgot to bring the animal to slaughter for the Korban Pesach, and it's far away and it's outside the Tchum, or you have to bring it through Rishut Rabim, you can't do it. Okay, that's not allowed. That's not Doche Shabbat, because that's something you could have done before Shabbat. The slaughtering itself, you can do, because you couldn't have done that before Shabbat. And Rabbi Yehuda says, just like he said by us in the name of Rav, he also says it here, Halachak Rabbi Akiva. So now the Gemara is going to ask the obvious question, which is, why did you need to say Paskin like Rabbi Akiva here and he Paskins like Rabbi Akiva there? Wouldn't you say it's all the same machloket? So once he says it once, he doesn't need to say it twice. Utsricha, you need it in both places. Why? If he had said it by milah, you would have said specifically there, deleka karet, because there's no chiyuv karet. Now this is a little strange. Okay, I'll actually preface this by saying there's only two positive commandments that have karet associated with it. If you don't do the positive commandment of Brit Milah and of Korban Pesach, you get karet, cut off. Okay, again, there's lots of different interpretations what that means. Nobody really knows. It's some punishment by God, which is very severe. Normally, you get it for certain mitzvot that are negative commandments. These are the only two places where if you don't fulfill a positive commandment, you get karet. But when it comes to Brit Milah, you don't get karet immediately. You get karet when you become a gadol and you don't take care of it. Okay, so they say here, since there's no karet associated with it, because if you don't do it today, you can do it tomorrow, you're not going to get karet immediately, then maybe we'd say that maybe you would have thought they won't be doche Shabbat. Aval Pesach, so that's why we paskin like Rabbi Akiva. But when it comes to Pesach, de'ika karet, if you don't do the Korban Pesach today, you're going to get karet for it. So Ema litchu Shabbat, maybe we'll allow you, let's say you get stuck and you don't have a gedi, maybe we'll allow you to bring that animal, the Pesach lamb, maybe we'll allow you to bring it on Shabbat. And that's why he needs to tell you also by Pesach. So now they go the reverse. Why don't you just say it by Pesach and we'll know for Brit Milah? We have this thing about the 13 britot. Remember we said it says 13 times that the word Brit. So you might have thought Brit Milah is so unique because there's 13 britot, and maybe that's why, if we said it by Pesach, we'd say by Pesach, Rabbi Akiva doesn't think you could do the preparatory work. But when it comes to Brit Milah, it's so important to do it that maybe we'd allow it. Maybe it would override Shabbat. That's why you needed him to tell you. In both cases, we don't hold that way. Okay, we don't hold that it's allowed. We paskin like Rabbi Akiva in both cases. New Mishnah. Osim kol tzarchei milah b'Shabbat. Now we're going to learn you could do anything you want for the purposes of the milah itself, not preparatory, but during the Brit Milah, all the actions that are necessary. And now we're going to go into what actions are necessary. Number one, mohalim. Okay, here are the parts of the Brit Milah. Okay, so you cut off the foreskin. That's the Brit Milah. That's the mohalim part. Por'im. After you cut the foreskin, then you peel it. You kind of peel it back. The Kohen explains you pull out a membrane. I don't know the exact details, but you take out a membrane basically in order to take the skin to kind of take the skin that's covering it and peel it back. Motzitzin. Okay, this is an interesting halacha. In those days, what they would do is the mohel would suck the blood out. They thought that this would prevent the blood from coagulating, and otherwise it was dangerous, or from clotting, basically, to prevent blood clots. They would, because there's a lot of blood there, they want to get all the blood out, so they would suck it out with their mouths. Now, many people came later and said, you thought it was dangerous if you don't do it, which we're going to see later in the Gemara, but many people said it's actually dangerous to do this. So So basically, we're going to say you cannot, right? People said you can't do mitzitza. It's dangerous. First of all, if someone has herpes, the baby could actually die. And also, right, germs and infection, and it's not a good thing. So many people, nowadays, it's much less common. There are still some Moalim that do it. In fact, there's been articles on the paper about it going against this custom. And it's not only in our generation, but also in the time of the Chasam Sofer, there were all these issues about it. And basically, this is a good case where modern medicine kind of negates, what do you do when it comes in conflict with halacha? And nowadays they do mitzitza in a different way with a tube. Sometimes the moal sucks out from the tube, or they actually put like a cotton in there and it gets sucked some other way. So basically, this is the halacha mitzitza. We do it, but in a bit of a different way than they used to. V'notznin ala isplanit v'kmon. Okay, now, the first part were all the parts that you have to do for the Brit Milah. Those are necessary parts, so of course they're doche Shabbat. Now we get into all the health issues. Well, you can put a bandage on it, and you can put cumin. Apparently, they use cumin, and they put cumin on the bandage, and that was supposed to heal. Im lo shachach me'erev Shabbat lo es b'shinav. If you didn't grind up the cumin before Shabbat, so you can do it with your teeth. Again, you have an issue of germs. Right? And you would never do this nowadays, but you could do it in some non-typical manner with a shinoi, as we call it. Vinotain, and then you can put it on. Im lo taraf yain v'shem, and that was also something. They would make a mixture. They would beat up wine with oil, kind of like you beat eggs, and you would put it on Erev Shabbat. If you didn't mix it from Erev Shabbat, you can't beat it on Shabbat. That's a problem. But we allow you, yinatein zebatzmo v'zebatzmo, you can put them together and hope that they kind of get mixed up together. But you can't actually beat it yourself. They would make this little pouch that they would put on to protect it, like a protective bandage. You can't create that on Shabbat. But you could just put a rag on top of it. But if you don't have a smartut handy from Erev Shabbat and you have to bring it from somewhere else, you can go into a nearby courtyard, wrap it around your finger as if it's like you're wearing it, and carry it to your house and use it in that way. Now the Gemara starts off and says, there's something that doesn't make sense in the first line of the Mishnah. The Mishnah starts out and says, you can do anything you need for the milah on Shabbat, and then it lists all the things. So the assumption is these words must be including something else that wasn't listed. It could have just said molim, malim, v'pol'in, all those things. So once it lists all of them, what do you need those words? Anything that's necessary for the Brit Milah. It must be coming to include what's mentioned in the following Braita. Hamal, while you're doing the Brit Milah, Kozman shuosek b'milah, while you're still doing the cutting, chozer ben al hatzitzin ha'makvin et hamilah ben al hatzitzin she'en makvin et hamilah. The assumption here is that when you do a Brit Milah and you cut, especially if their knives weren't so great, you might end up leaving some of the skin behind. So depends, there's different types. Some are what's called tzitzin, these strips of skin that are ma'akvin et hamilah, that basically are part that have to be cut, and that prevents the milah from actually being a valid Brit Milah. That, of course, you can do. But even the ones that theoretically you've been yotzei your halacha of Brit Milah, you're okay, but you still have a few little skin, like you leave a little skin over, even those you're allowed to cut on Shabbat as long as you're still in the moment of the cutting, and that you haven't stopped. But peresh, once you stop, once you stop the cutting and you take a break, at that point, if you look and you say, okay, let's see how it's looking, and you realize that you've left tzitzin that are not makvin et hamilah, okay, meaning you've taken care of anything that's necessary, but there's a few that you can get rid of. It would look better, but you don't have to do that in order to be yotzei the mitzvah. Since it's Shabbat, you can't go back and cut them anymore, according to this Braita. So what they're basically saying is, what's the kol tzorchei milah? Kol tzorchei milah includes the tzitzin that are makvin et hamilah, the ones that prevent your milah from being a good Brit Milah. And theoretically, if you're still in the middle of it, then you can even cut the ones that are not ma'akev et hamilah, okay, that don't prevent you from fulfilling the mitzvah. Now the Gemara wants to know, who's the Tana of this Braita? Who's the one who thinks, Man Tana, who holds, who's the Tana who says, Peresh eino chozer, that once you stopped, you can't go back. This goes again to what we say when we say that Brit Milah is Dochesh Shabbat. What does it mean it's Dochesh Shabbat? Does it mean Shabbat is eliminated entirely for this whole time period while we're dealing with the Brit Milah? We could do anything associated with it, even if it's not part of the fulfillment of the mitzvah. Now, the tzitzin she'ena ma'akvim, we're going to see that the Gemara views this as part of the mitzvah of Zeh Keli V'Amveu, of Hidur mitzvah, what we call. We want to do mitzvot in the most beautiful way possible. So to cut off, like, think about it, adrabah, something totally different, but if you're cutting something, right, and you leave little shreds, right, it doesn't look nice. You want to make it look nice. So you want the mitzvah to look nice. So therefore, generally, we cut these tzitzim, even if they're not ma'akev, we cut them. So the question is, are you allowed to do that on Shabbat or not? Because of Hidur mitzvah or no? And then, according to this Braita, well, only if you're still in the middle of doing the mitzvah. It sounds from the fact that they're saying, who's the Tana who holds this? The Gemara is trying to say, there are those who hold that once you're Dochesh Shabbat, it's as if Shabbat's not there right now. And while you're doing Brit Milah, you can still continue. Even if you stop, you can still go on and cut off the extra parts. So who's the one who says this? Amar Rabba Bar Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. We're now going to have 3 different possibilities. We're going to reject the first 2 and be left with the last one. He suggests that it's actually a machloket of something we saw previously. Rabbi Yishmael ben Rabbi Yochanan ben Brokehi. Tanya. If you remember, we learned this Braita. Arba'asar shechal liyot b'Shabbat, mafshit hapesach ad hachazeh. Divrei Rabbi Yishmael ben Rabbi Yochanan ben Brokehi. If the 14th falls on Shabbat, which was what we were discussing earlier today, you slaughter the animal on Shabbat. And when you slaughter the animal, what do? You slaughter, you start taking off you flay the hide, and until which point, why you flay the hide? Because you need to get to the imurim that are inside, which are the inner parts of the animal that have to be burnt on the altar. So you take out those pieces. What happens when you're done taking out those pieces? So you flay the hide until that point. If you remember, there's a whole machloket. Can you flay the entire hide, or do you have to stop? Now, theoretically, what happened here? You flay the hide until the imurim. You take out the imurim. Now the question is, can you continue? This is exactly the same. You stopped. Maybe if you were in the middle of flaying and you just flayed the whole thing all at once, that would be allowed. But here you stop, take out the imurim, or are you allowed to flay the rest of it? So Rabbi Shmuel ben Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka says only ad hachazeh, only until the chest, where you can then access the imurim. Once you do that, you can't anymore. That sounds exactly like our case. Once you stop, you can't do the rest of it. But the rabbis disagree and think you could do the whole thing. So now they don't like this connection. They say, Mimai, why are you comparing these? Maybe you could say, there's no mitzvah beautification of the meat of the animal. It's not like if you flay the hide, the meat looks nicer. We don't care about the meat right now. You're not going to even deal with the meat till nighttime. But in this case, but maybe here you would say that it would be the same, because here we would allow it. Even Rabbi Shmuel ben Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka would allow it here because it's part of beautification of the mitzvah. So if we already overread Shabbat to do the beginning part, we'll allow you, even if you stop, to finish it up and do it in the most beautiful way possible. How do we know that this is an important issue? Titania's, it says in the following Braita. Now note that Milah is not mentioned here, but they assume that Milah is part of this. How did they darshan this pasuk? Hidna elefanav b'mitzvot. According to Tanakama, it means do the mitzvot in a beautiful manner. Aseh lefanav sukkah, make a beautiful sukkah, right? Make the sukkah the nicest it could be. Lulav na'eh, take a beautiful lulav. Shofar na'eh, right? Pick out the nicest one. We know people who go to the shuk to buy, and they search for the nicest lulav possible. Vishofar na'eh, make your a shofar the most beautiful it could be. Tzitzit na'eh, have nice tzitzit. Sefer Torah na'eh. Okay, what's a Sefer Torah na'eh? A beautiful Sefer Torah. Katubo lishmo, it was written l'shem. Okay, there's a whole halacha. Sefer Torah has to be written l'shma, and the names of God have to be written l'shma. Some people say this has nothing to do with Zeh Livam Beu. This is just in here among the list of other things, because it's not necessarily any more beautiful whether someone has intent or not. You can't really tell the difference. Although maybe one can claim that if you have, when you do it l'shma, it comes out nicer, maybe. But the rest of these things are really beautiful. B'diona, use the nicest ink, the nicest quill, lavlar uman. Go find the best sofer, right? An expert sofer. Korcho b'shiraim name, you cover it with beautiful cloth, beautiful silk. Abishaul omer ve'anvehu. Right? We have a Sefer Torah in our shul that has these silk scarves on it. Right? It's this idea of beautification of it. Abishaul omer ve'anvehu. He has a different explanation. What does it mean ve'anvehu? Heve domelo. You're supposed to be as close to God as possible. Mahu chanum v'rachum, af atah chanum v'rachum. If God is merciful, you should be merciful. It's in your actions, how you behave, and not how you do the mitzvah. So anyway, why don't we say that? That's right. That is all to say that Rabbi Shmuel ben Yosh Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka there says you don't continue because there's no mitzvah of beautification of a mitzvah. But here it's hidur mitzvah to get rid of the tzitzim, and maybe he would agree that it's okay. So that doesn't work. Next option. El Amar Va'ashi Hamane Rabbi Yossi. It's Rabbi Yossi's opinion in the following machloket. Titna. Okay, now we're moving on to a different mitzvah. It's what we call Kiddush HaChodesh. You're supposed to testify at the end of every month that you saw the new moon. Eidim are supposed to come to say, oh, I saw the new moon. And then the Beit Din decides, is it the new moon? Was it not? They ask all sorts of questions. Now, you're allowed to travel on Shabbat in order to get there. You could be Mechalel Shabbat to get there. It's so important. So, Bein Shenei Ba'alil, Bein Shalom Nerei Ba'alil, Mechalalim Alav Et HaShabbat. According to Tanakama, there's two ways you could see the new moon. Either it's very obvious, in which case it's not so important that you come forward because the Beit Din themselves are going to know, or they'll find someone nearby who's going to know. Or it wasn't so clear, like it was a cloudy night and it was hard to see, but you happen to notice it. Then, so now the Mishnah says, Tanakama says, it doesn't matter either which way you come forward, whether it was obvious or whether it wasn't obvious. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Nireh Ba'alil, Em Mechalalim Alav Et HaShabbat. You can't be Mechalel Shabbat if it was so clear because there's no need. Okay, what's the basic bottom line here? If there's no need to be Dochesh Shabbat, then you don't need to. Likewise, with the tzitzim, she'enam ma'akvim, there's no need to cut them, so therefore you don't. So now the Gemara says, no, you're comparing apples and oranges here. Mimai. Dilmad kan lo kam Rabbi Yossi hatam dilo nitna Shabbat lidachot. In that case, there's no reason to push off Shabbat. Aval hacha dinitna Shabbat lidachot. Here you had a brit milah, and we allowed Shabbat to be overridden to begin with. So hachinami, we would say, maybe he would say here, since already Shabbat was pushed aside, and this is what I said before, it's sort of a matter of how you view Shabbat being pushed aside. Is it just pushed aside to allow you? It's kind of like the idea before about if there's someone else who can do it, yes, it's true, it's doche, but maybe if you can find a better solution, so then you can't. Likewise here, it's pushed off, but maybe if you don't need to push it off anymore, right? But they come and say, no. Once it's pushed off, it's pushed off. You can't learn from here from a case where it's not even pushed off in the first place because there's no need for you to come to the court. So therefore, Shabbat was not nidche for you. Here, if Shabbat was nidche for you, what's the difference if you stopped, took a break in the middle? So they're not comparable. Ela Amri Nahardia, third answer, and this answer will stay. Rabbanan deplige le Rabbi Yossi. It must be the rabbis who disagree with Rabbi Yossi in the following case. Ditnan. Arba'a kohanim nichnesim. Now we're talking about the lechem apanim. The lechem apanim, the showbread, sat in these there were two stacks of 6 breads each, and there were 2 bezichei levona. Those are bowls with frankincense in them that either went in between the 2 rows or on top of them. Okay, so how did they move it to the switch on Shabbat? There's an issue because it says the bread has to be lefanai tamid. So how do you have it before God always if you have to take them off and put new ones on? So 4 kohanim come in, shnayim bi'adam shnei starim, 2 are holding each one stack of 6, ushnayim bi'adam shnei bezichim, and each are carrying, another 2 people each are holding one of the bowls of frankincense, ba'arba'a makdimim lifnehem, and 4 come before them, shnayim litol shnei starim, ushnayim litol shnei bezichim. You have another 4 coming to get rid of the old ones. Hamachnisim omdim mitzafon upnehem l'darom. Okay, the table goes east-west, and now they stand on south-north, so those stand on the south, facing the north, facing the south, and the motziim, the ones taking them out, stand on the south side, facing the north. Basically, at the same time, we start pulling those out, and the other ones start pushing theirs in. The hand of one is almost touching the hand of the other. And that's the way we get it to be tamid, continuous. Rabbi Yossi Omer, afilu elu notnim ve'elu menichim, af zeh hayat tamid. It doesn't matter. If you take them off and a few seconds later someone puts it on, that's fine. That's still tamid. We don't take tamid so literally. So now, how does this connect to ours? Well, peresh, once you stop, according to the rabbis here, if you had a break of anything, that's considered a break, and that's a problem. Likewise, by us, if you took a break, that stops it, and then Shabbat is no longer pushed off, and you can't continue anymore. So we finally found our answer, even though theoretically one could start making arguments that these cases are quite different, but we're going to leave that at that for right now. Tanu Rabbanan, mahal ketina tamila. You can cut off you can basically finish up the milah, complete the cutting. V'im lo hilket anush karet. If you didn't finish it up, you get karet. So mane, who is this? Go according to. I'm sorry, who is getting karet here? If you didn't finish up the brit milah, who gets the karet? Amar Rav Kahana uman. By the way, we're talking not about Shabbat in general. We're just talking about getting rid of the tzitzim that are makvin tamilah. If you don't finish the job, right? This is in my house. It's always finish the job, right? Get it done and get it done right. If you don't, you get karet. So who gets karet? Rav Kahana says the uman. The mohel gets karet if he doesn't do the brit milah properly. Matkefla Rav Papa uman. No, the uman can't get karet. Lema lehu ana avde palga de mitzvah atana vidu palga de mitzvah. I did half. You finish it up. In other words, I did my part. The rest is not, you don't need me to do it. You could do it yourself. This is the opposite of finish the job, right? This is some worker comes to your house. He does part of the job. He figures you can finish it up yourself, right? Goes on all the time here. Elam Rav Papa gadol. So Rav Papa says, no, it's a gadol. It means if you're a gadol and they left the tzitzin and you didn't make sure that they came off, you get karet. So matkefla Ravashi gadol behediktive. You don't need a drasha to tell you that the gadol gets karet. If it's tzitzim that prevent the milah from being complete, we already know the pasuk says Harel Zachar Shelo Yimol, right? He gets karet if he doesn't do brit milah. And even though you did part of it, you didn't do the whole thing. You obviously get karet. You don't need to tell us this. Elam Rabashi lo olam uman. It is the uman, and what would be the case though? It's an interesting case. Kigon da'ata ben hashmashot Shabbat. He came right at twilight time, where it was right Saturday, the end of Shabbat. Va'amru le lo mispakat, and they said to him, "Listen, you're not going to finish this on Shabbat, so don't get started because you're going to end up, if you don't finish the Brit Milah on Shabbat, then Shabbat was not nidcheh. So you're going to basically do something asur on Shabbat." He says, no, I know, I can do it. This is those arrogant people who say, oh, I know I can finish it. And in the end, he didn't. He's going to get karet. It turns out he did a chabura, and he's chayav karet, not for Brit Milah, he's chayav karet for not keeping Shabbat. Okay, some people, there's actually a whole debate. Does he really get karet, or is it really korban chatat? Is he considered shogeg, or is he considered mezi? He thought he would do it, so maybe he's really only shogeg. Some people say no, he really gets karet because it was really mezi, because they all knew that he was wrong. Motzitzin. Now we're going to talk about mitzitza quickly. Amar Papa, hi umna delo mayit sakanahu. If you don't do mitzitza, it's dangerous. Vavrin anle, and we actually stop you from being a mohel. You get fired from your job. Pshita. They said, isn't that obvious that it's sakana? Why would you need to tell us this? Midika machalale ale Shabbat sakanu. Obviously, if we let you do it on Shabbat, it must be it's sakana. It's obviously not part of the mitzvah of brit milah. It's because it's dangerous. Ma'udete mahayda mifka pakid kamash v'lan chibur mechaber. Because you might have thought that the blood is just there and you're just taking it out and you're not actually causing a wound. This is coming to teach you, no, you're causing a wound. By taking out blood, that means you're causing a wound to the child, in which case you would be chayav on Shabbat. If it's just that the blood is there and you're just taking it out, there's nothing wrong with doing that on Shabbat. Here they're trying to tell you, no, it really is a wound, but you're allowed to do it because it's dangerous. V'notnim alav isplanit. Amar Abai, Amar Li'aim. We're going to see a lot about this. We'll talk about tomorrow what Amar Li'aim is. Okay, it's not really his mother. It was the woman who took care of him. Isplanit, because his mother died in childbirth. Isplanita de kulun. She told him, and tomorrow we're going to see all sorts of interesting things she tells him. Kibe shav. So the best kind of isplanita, of the way you do a bandage is like this. Shev mane tarba, 7 times of chalev, that fat, v'chad akira, and 1 of wax. That's what you should do to make, that's the best kind of bandage that heals. Rav Amar Kira V'Kalba, it should be waxed with the sap of a tree, of the Rishina tree. Darsha Rava b'Mechoza, and here we end with a very interesting story. Rava taught in Mechoza exactly as Abai said, that this is how you should make your bandages. What happened? Kar'inu b'nei yume Asya l'minehu. The sons of Benayu, the doctor, tore their clothing because they realized they now have no source of income, because this is what they did for a living, and he took away their secrets, right? This is all about patent law and all that, right? He basically told everybody how to do it. Amar Lahu, Amar Lahu, he says to them, don't be so upset. I left you one thing, meaning either he didn't tell all their secrets, or he's kind of telling them, I'll give you an in into something else that you can make a business out of. Here's a secret that I won't give away. Damar Shmuel, if you wash your face and you don't wipe it properly, you're going to get all these cracks and maybe pimples and blemishes on your face. And my takante, what do you do to resolve this? Here's the secret Shmuel told me. Lim shituva b'mayit silka. Wash it very well with beet water, and that will resolve it. Now you can do your business based on this, and it's not like I took away all of your parnasa. Okay, with that, we'll finish for today. Sorry for the long shiur, and the shiur for Shabbat will be up shortly. Shabbat shalom.